Joining us now, we're trying to impress him, Greg Pruett, Honor, Idaho, Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. All things good about our great state. Our man, the intrepid reporter. The man who probably, once he's done with this program, will get many phone calls, Greg Pruett. Hello, sir.
Oh, good. Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
One of the few people that are not afraid to come on this show anymore. We appreciate that. What do they call it? The blockade continues. But thankfully, we have you on. And, you and I talked about the state GOP convention. You told me, hey, the Dorothy Moon would win. She did. And but not without a lot of controversy, not without a lot of people stating that, I don't want to lead the witness. You're the reporter from the Idaho Dispatch. You tell us, sir.
Yeah, it's always hard to take down an incumbent, essentially, no matter what the election is. It can be tough. And, there was a three-way race with her and Mark Fuller, and Mark Fuller was also going for the conservative portion of the delegates. And then Stephen Thain, who was going to be the kind of the representative, so to speak, for the more moderate wing of the party. And it's just a tough haul. A lot of people know Dorothy, and it's just a lot easier to go with the incumbent, I think, most of the time. And a lot of the delegates like what she has done with the party, but clearly a chunk didn't, but not enough to ultimately unseat her from the position.
Yeah, that's a good start, not getting yourself in trouble with her. Let's continue to move into hot water. So what we saw, though, again, she has very powerful allies that carry her water. As the chairman, she can put her people in. And from what I understand, it wasn't easy, especially when the state treasurer of the GOP resigned, saying that if she were reelected, he would not run again because the whole party is broke. It's 50th in the country in fundraising. That wasn't an issue, and when it's the cult of personality, good or bad, people are going to elect people they're comfortable with. But it was a pretty emotional speech that was played over and over again on social media. Were you shocked by that?
You're talking about Steve Bender's speech?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. He's been doing work for the party for a really long time, and I think just decided that he was going to throw his hat in and just say, "Hey, look, if Mark Fuller wins, I'll stay. If he doesn't, and if it ends up being Dorothy, I'm not going to run for chair again, for treasurer." So I wasn't really shocked about the speech. I have some committee members that sit on the committee, the state GOP committee, that had told me there's just been a lot of angst and a lot of infighting, even within the committee, and a lot of people frustrated, in particular, like you mentioned, with the fundraising aspect of the party. And that's just become kind of that was kind of the main topic that seemed to swell around the division there.
Yeah, didn't really move the needle. You and I both predicted this years ago when Moon was elected, that this would happen. It happens to everybody. It's not particular to her, but the fundraising is troubling considering you live in a ruby red, the reddest of the red, to quote Butch Otter. So, Greg Pruett, we'll put you back on the spot. Why are people not giving money to the state Republican Party?
Well, there's several aspects of this that I guess you could look at. Her defense was, it's Idaho, it's a small state. There aren't as many donors as in some other states. And I think part of that doesn't hold up too well because states like Utah and Wyoming and others that have, maybe a little bit more Republicans or the same amount of Republicans, they're doing really well with their fundraising. And so, is it that the fact that we're just a smaller state? I don't think so. That doesn't seem to hold up against some of the other smaller states that seem to be doing a lot better. And so, and here's the thing, Kevin, is it's not that we're just last. I mean, we're significantly in last, right? I mean, somebody's going to be last, but if the numbers between last and state number 40 are all about the same per donor, then okay, everybody's maybe doing pretty well. We're just so far behind, and I think that was one aspect of it. You could say, well, Donald Trump's the president, so maybe donors don't want to donate. I don't know. The other part that you have to look at is, are we doing fundraising properly? Are we out doing the right kind of events, the right types of pitches to high dollar donors? And I mean, there's so many questions about, and I don't know, I don't follow Dorothy's day to day, but a lot of people seemed to think, at least that were opposed to her, that the hardcore good fundraising that we need to fight the ballot initiative has not been done. That was their contention.
Well, also, you've had posts on social media telling people not to donate to the party. And these people are Republicans saying that the party doesn't give to candidates. And, social media can be the driver for it. And then you have the Idaho Majority Club that has raised a lot of money. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I'll go around saying it on social media. I haven't given to the GOP, national or state, in a really long time, because the GOP machine, by and large, most of the time ends up supporting rhinos. So I don't really care to support the machine that is giving to rhinos and stuff like that. I'm also kind of the opinion, like, I think your money is maybe better spent helping the candidates you really want to support, because the money is going to their candidacies. So, but there are people that do go around and say, hey, don't bother. I honestly, Kevin, don't think that has very much impact. I don't think.
My point being, though, Greg, at 580 KIDO, Honor Idaho's Greg Pruett with us, is that money can be raised in the state. Now, again, different crowd, but money can be raised in the state through channels that, when you had a previous chairman that was voted out, Tom Luna, could get for the party. So the money's there, is my point.
Yeah, there's money to be had, and I think that's the hard part when you're the chair, obviously, is you have to be able to try and pull in money, even from people that maybe don't agree with your platform as much as maybe they agreed with Tom Luna's. Look, no, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A lot of people who have worked closely with Dorothy have had a lot of issues with her personality, and they say she's a little bit too overbearing, all this kind of stuff. And maybe for some high dollar donors, that was really off-putting, and didn't want to donate to the party because they didn't like the direction that she was taking it or how she was leading it or whatever. That's always going to be the case. I mean, to be fair, if you had a mega conservative donor and they were sick and tired of rhinos and Tom Luna got reelected, maybe you'd lose that funding, so.
Well, but again, you just were really, really last. It doesn't matter. And we congratulate Moon for winning. However, you and I are looking at this as you, the reporter, me, the political scientist. And for people that aren't following this every day, we're being objective here. We're not calling people names. We're just saying this is the case that it is. We go back to Barry Peterson. They did the same thing to him, but not to this extent. And I can remember he saying on this show, the governor's bending me over when he was talking about Butch Otter. So you have to be like the United Nations. That's the worst job you can get in this state. You don't get paid for it. I've seen that job chew up a ton of people, with the exception of being Tom Luna. He seemed to thrive on that job. You remember Jonathan Parker. You remember Steve Yates. You remember Norm Semenko, Raul Labrador. They all had challenging times within the state GOP, which is fascinating. One more final question about this. But on one hand, people move to Idaho and they go, it's the reddest of the red, and that you have 5 political parties. Now, again, you from the Idaho Dispatch, Honor Idaho, the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, you work with all these people, and they tell you things. Most notably, whether it's your opinion or not, we're asking for you to give us your thoughts on, what makes this political structure so unique and yet so frustrating when we're talking about the party politics in Idaho. It should be very simple. The liberal loons, like the folks in Boise, should lose and we should win, but it's not that simple.
Yeah, I mean, it never is. especially in state party politics. It's always a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that have moved here are very conservative and conservative leaning, and they have no idea what they've walked into with the current infighting, so to speak, within the party. I don't even know if you want to call it infighting at this point. I think there's just multiple. There's like essentially three parties within the party, all fighting for power, and that's somewhat a byproduct of you live in a state that is 80% Republican. You're just, at some point you get to the level of, well, we need it to be more Republican or we need it to be very moderate Republican. And that's what the fight's over. It's not really over the Democrats. The Democrats essentially don't hold power here. So the fighting turns towards each other and trying to push the party further to the right or further to the left. And that's just the dynamic that a state like this has.
Yeah, it is really, really fascinating yet frustrating. Greg, can you hang on for a moment?
Yes, sir.
All right. More great content from our friend Greg Pruett next. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. And welcome back. Our friend Greg Pruett joining us. Honore, Idaho, the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, the Idaho Dispatch. Hey, Greg, Mondami is running wild in New York. You think that could happen in Idaho at all? The Democratic Socialists, they're saying they're eyeing the White House now. Any thoughts on that?
well, probably not anytime soon. I don't see a governor, or a big, I don't know. You could argue McLean is one of the Democrat socialists. She's done a pretty good job of ruining our great capital city. But no, I, Kevin, and you've known this for years. I've said the bigger threat right now is these ballot initiatives, because these groups have figured out. In fact, I wrote an article on Honore, Idaho about the numbers to get to the 70,000 signatures they needed. Okay, they could almost every district that they went to, and they have to get 18 of the legislative districts to get 6%. Well, guess what? There are more Democrats for that 6% in almost all of those districts. So in theory, they don't even need Republicans to get these ballot initiatives on a ballot. That's the type of stuff that we've got to wake up to, Kevin, because that's the way you flip the state from red to purple to blue, is by taking advantages of the laws that we have and these ballot initiatives. And that's would be how you turn our state into a state like California or whatever. But in terms of some socialists running for governor and winning, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Let's go back to before we get to the ballot initiatives and obviously the state of the opposition. Let's talk about Boise. We have Mayor McLean now doing videos. We wrote about that, and I really, again, maybe I'm an old man, which I am. Maybe I'm cranky, which I am. But I don't see the benefit of, hi, I'm in the Boise River wearing a dress and the water is cold, when taxes are going up, when there's been several scandals with the police maligned by her excessive spending, and yet she runs wild and free, decorating no flagpole is safe with her.
Yeah, she's extremely tone deaf, in my opinion. I don't get it. And there's a lot of politicians like that, right? That they do stupid stuff that you're just going, oh my gosh, they're passing the biggest budget they've ever had. They just raised property taxes as much as they could. Wanted to raise it a lot more. I mean, and like you said, you're running around in the river trying to act like one of us, I guess. So maybe focus on fixing the city and the real issues the city faces versus. But this has been the model, Kevin. They take over the largest cities and just run them into the ground. And that's what you're going to see. I mean, to make a point, your point. There was a video, I want to say a week and a half ago, in Seattle of the commie Seattle mayor running around on a soccer field and just fell flat on her face. It was the funniest video you've ever seen. It tripped over herself, fell right on her face, and it was just kind of symbolic of how these guys run these cities. They just run them straight into the ground.
Which brings us to Ada County, and why hasn't the Ada County GOP made her a project. There's been a lot of infighting in the Idaho County GOP. It's Idaho's largest county, the most prosperous county. It's where the decisions are made, and yet Ada County could be purple for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously all the commissioners are still, elected Republicans. Will that hold over time? History says no, because when you look at with Seattle and Portland, all these other big cities that they take over, eventually the conservatives in those cities just get tired of it. And you just push out further and further and further away from the larger cities, and eventually they're left to the leftists, no pun intended. And so, should somebody really take a good, hard swing at McLean politically, electorally, okay, for everyone to listen in, I mean, you need a good candidate, you need a good ground game, and you got to give it everything you can, because the issue is everybody looks at the numbers and they go, well, the numbers seem like she should be beatable. Sure. But now you're talking about a turnout of, I don't know what it is, 60 to 80% Republicans. I mean, you'd have to turn out almost everybody. And the problem, as you know, Kevin, is city elections are on the bottom of the totem pole. And so you've really got to find a candidate who can just rally, not just Republicans, but maybe independents who are like, look, this lady's nuts. I'm not Republican, but we've gone way too far the other direction. And so you've got to find a good candidate who has a good ground game and can, pull off that type of campaign. And even then, maybe it's not possible. Maybe Boise's lost. I think that it's worth taking one or two more shots to try and retake the city before we, throw in the towel.
Well, you've got to have a good support system, a good offensive line, and people have to be committed. And Boise seems to be its own entity, whether it's city council, whether it's the state senate or state house races. You don't really have a lot of ush. Before we get to the initiatives, what are politics too toxic in this state for like the average ordinary people? Because it just seems that everybody calls everybody names.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a segment of people that they don't want to deal with politics at all. And so because of, how toxic and how vicious it can be at times, that's a chunk of people. But I honestly, Kevin, I think it's less about that. And I think there's far more people who just don't care. They don't care. They don't care until it goes bad, right? Then it goes bad, and then they're like, how did this happen? And you're like, well, you remember that politics thing you said you hated and you wanted to avoid and you just didn't have time for it? Well, it had time for you, right? It didn't care whether you hated it or not. It's just it's the adjudication of power. There's two sides constantly fighting to maintain or take that power. So I think that segment, Kevin, the complacency segment, if you will, is significantly larger than people who deliberately stay out just because of how toxic it can be.
Speaking of toxic, we move on to the ballot initiatives. Have we ever found out about the weed? Did the weed get shot down yet? I mean, are we still counting ballots? Look, with all due respect to the Secretary of State, he's a nice man that likes to be on every media outlet that they don't ask him any tough questions. So I would just ask the Secretary of State, did we certify the weed? Have we certified the challenge to the pro-life law? Where's the press release? I mean, we have a press release on how to vote or America 250 or here's a stuffed potato, but we don't have it on this, or have I missed it?
No. So, to be fair to Secretary McGrain, the counties have until June 30th to submit their validated signatures.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, the whole process takes forever. So they have until June 30th, and then the state still has, I want to say 10 to 15 days to certify the certified signatures. Like it's crazy. So that's why you haven't heard anything official yet. But
wait a minute. With respect, shouldn't we have an update on how many counties have actually? I mean, this is a real issue. It's not like urging people to vote. This is what people are caring about. I would think that I would say, hey, we have 25 counties in or whatever counties in. Maybe I just like the news business, Greg.
No, and I think that's fair. I think it would be fair for, maybe somebody to go, hey, Phil, can you just, you don't have to tell us even which county, hey, 25 of 44 counties have submitted signatures on weed and on the abortion one, or, just some updates. I don't think there's any laws that would prohibit him from doing that. I'd have to check. But yeah, I think some updates. What we do know is that the abortion people were submitting their signatures right away, right?
Yeah.
They were turning them in nonstop, certifying them. I mean, it was a real professionally ran campaign. The weed people, from what we understand and what I was told, they just gathered as much as they thought they needed from every county and then dumped it all into the counties. so they're probably taking forever. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if the abortion initiative has already all been turned in by all the counties, and they're just working on the weed one currently because they didn't get them certified as they were going along.
So let's get dangerous and say most people assume the abortion challenge, aided by the media, aided by big money, aided by the false narrative that the state is losing doctors and the state is killing women, will be on the ballot. We have people saying that the Republicans have to come together. Well, the Republicans didn't stop the ballot initiative to begin with, the letter writing things. How does what does the opposition to the abortion or the end of the pro-life law look like?
Yeah, and that's the tough part. That's where that whole fundraising question comes back into play, because our side is going to be outspent. We know that. That's nothing new. The left always has way more money that they're willing to dump into these programs and in these issues. Here's the thing, Kevin. I've told people. I said I think with 250,000, Honore, Idaho would crush this thing. Because here's the reality: is I've talked to people in my own church. People, to your point, are not political at all, and I say, hey, do you know about this ballot initiative? Nobody knows about it. Nobody has a freaking clue right now that this thing is going to hit the ballot. And once I tell them what it can do, that it's abortion up until birth, depending on what the doctor says, they're like, wait, what? That's happening in Idaho? And they're like, oh, heck no. Okay, that's the reaction you're going to get once voters who are not plugged in understand what we're up against. So you only need enough money to educate and wake up the voters to that one reality. That's it. And this thing is done. Like, I honestly think it would get crushed if people know what it does. But that's the key, right? We have to have enough money to get to those voters to educate them on what it does.
Well, and then you have the earned media that is backing this false narrative.
Correct, and that's one reason I've always been against ballot initiatives completely. If it was up to me, we'd just abolish them, because the media is a huge propaganda machine, for these bad ones. And if you were ever to try and run a good one, if the grocery tax one had made it, they would have found some way to just constantly attack it, right, and constantly undermine it. So yeah, the media, it's all free publicity for the pro-abortion folks this year.
So let's talk a little bit about the state of play here. Greg Pruett joining us, Honor Idaho, Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, Idaho Dispatch, Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. A lot of people have been critical of the Speaker of the House. I say, compared to his predecessor, he's doing a lot. People very, very passionately call people that support him donut eaters. How do you see the Speaker? Is he really the unseen power behind everything in Idaho, and will he keep his slot?
He's the Speaker, so he does wield a lot of power. I think he did a very good job tying himself to a lot of conservative lawmakers who rally behind him. So that certainly gave him a leg up in the fight over how the party went. I am told that him and Dorothy are fairly close, and so if you believe that, then that means that he's also wielding, good power with the state party, and helping, push maybe narratives that he would like to get pushed. So, yeah, I think again, it's a speaker, so he already does have a lot of power, and I think he's, Moyle is very savvy. He's very good at the game. He's been around for decades, so he knows how the game's played. He knows what to do. Can he keep his power? That's the big question, and I don't. It'll be interesting because he's sort of like Dorothy, and he's a very outgoing, very aggressive personality, and so some people don't like that. I think if the Main Street Caucus or the more moderate wing of the party feels like they can get him unelected as speaker, they're certainly going to take that chance. And, since some of the more conservative people lost in the House, and you've got more moderates in there now, I think his chances are on a razor's edge.
Yeah. A couple more for our friend Greg Pruett here at 580 KIDO. I can't talk about Idaho politics without our man, Senator Guthrie. 5 constitutional officers endorse him. The Attorney General endorses his opponent. Why do people care so much about this guy in eastern Idaho?
Well, I don't. I mean, he's been around for a long time, and so some of them I think are good friends with him. Some of them didn't want to lose. If he had lost, he's losing to David Worley, who's going to be extremely conservative. And so I think it was perhaps more of we have to keep more moderates in power or we might lose the Senate. I think that was the big concern there. But he kind of just does whatever Governor Little tells him to do, in my opinion. And so it was, imperative for them to keep him. But what does that tell you, Kevin? Okay, so you have a senator who not only blocks all the good gun legislation, he was essentially the sole reason. Okay, you could put some blame on Anthony, the Senate pro tem, as well, but he's the chair that blocks all the illegal immigration reform, all of it. So, and they put all their eggs behind defending the guy who wants to give driver's licenses to illegals. And so, go all the way back to why do people not want to donate to the party? That's why. They're sick of supporting Republicans who are basically Democrats with an R next to their name.
Yeah. Pretty wild. Okay, we had our friend Senator Zito on explain this whole thing, and this is very inside to people, but if you follow anybody on social media, and if you're not, this is entertainment purposes only. However, what do you make this whole Gang of 8 that was vilified by Dorothy Moon and all these other people, and then the Freedom Foundation, the Freedom Caucus? That's why we have you on. Can you explain what it is, what happened, and why there was a target on them from Republicans, including people on talk radio that ripped them? And I'm going, man, maybe I need to go get my Declaration of Independence because I'm really missing the whole validity of attacking lawmakers that are conservative Republicans. But can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Gang of 8 was largely considered the most conservative wing at the Capitol, okay? And they were very vocal and outspoken and didn't mind taking on leadership. And there were other conservative lawmakers who used to be like that, and then they kind of fell behind. It goes back to Mike Moyle again. And a lot of them just aligned with Mike Moyle, and they wanted to change maybe some of the tactics that were used to try and pass, conservative legislation. And so, yeah, you saw a concerted effort, and normally you see it just from the rhinos, right, trying to take out our most conservative lawmakers. But clearly, I don't know if there's a coordinated plan, but everybody just decided from the far left, who ran deceitful ads that the AG had to come out and go after, to the moderates, which we expected. But then you had, Dorothy Moon, who's the chair, was on audio saying she didn't want the Gang of 8 to become the Gang of 10. Meaning she didn't want more of those hardline conservative lawmakers, which is like, wait, what? Because, Dorothy's considered by many to be a hardline conservative. And so there's, why is that happening? And then to your point, some radio host who claimed to be conservative were going after them. I mean, they had the entire kitchen sink, Kevin, thrown at them, and it worked. It worked. They were able to smear those guys and just malign and attack them, and I think it caught a lot of them off guard, and a lot of them ended up getting unelected because of it.
Greg Pruett, Honor, Idaho. Appreciate you, bro. As always,
Yeah.
We're still here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, Kevin. Always happy to come on.
All right, Greg Pruett, check him out. Honor, Idaho, the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Kevin Miller on your home for Fox News 580 KIDO.